Alright, in the lab today, a bass with Serum. So I'm working on this beat. And it's this bass I want to teach you how to do. This is the one. So let's do this. The preset of the bass will be on my Patreon. I mean this one. So the preset will be on my Patreon. And one thing I really want to say thank you to everybody who's supporting me on Patreon, because it feels good. It's very encouraging. It does now pay a part of my living, and it does make me feel good about creating more content. I got a long list of topics to go through. It's insanely long. There's a lot of stuff. I live in this lab. I make my living in this lab, mixing and mastering music, nerding out with plugins, making music. It's part of my living as well. So all the support just feels good. Thank you for that. If you want to go and support me on Patreon, you will get a lot of content there, including this preset. Now, let's rock. So I was working on this beat and I created this bass, and I want to be doing it again. I want to teach you how to do it. So I will keep this bass that I have so I can compare. It'll be a good chance to teach myself once again. So what I will do, let's say that I'll loop this region so I can get back to this bass. So let's load Serum first. And what I will start with, let me actually check back here. I guess I could keep this one open here. That's the one that I did, and this is the one that I will be doing. So I will start with, I'll use 2 oscillators. So let's go for the basic shapes. These already give you quite a bit of material to work with. So basic shapes, and I did assign, and this will be the other one, like a sawtooth, downward. So this will not sound very exciting for now. I'll turn it down so I can compare. Alright, so let's push on. So there will be a few things. I will run you through it all. Could make this a little bigger. So I usually, when I do a bass, I usually use 2 oscillators. Sometimes I use 1. If I want to do something kind of basic but filthy, I often use square wave to start with, because it has a good amount of harmonics and also sub. But sometimes it's nice to do a 2 oscillator bass. And one thing I like to do is this. When you pitch it up, you can hear the oscillator start to, there's a nice fluttering sound going on. This is very static. So when you tune the oscillators against each other, they start to kind of fluctuate, which is very nice. Alright, so quick comparison. We're far, but no fear. So I created this little fluttering sound, or whatever you want to call it, because the oscillators are not so static against each other. So a lot of this, actually, let me activate filter, because I want to be able to cut some of the off of the sound. So we can tune this later on, but also sometimes I use the oscillator of the noise oscillator of Serum, because it can give you a little bit of extra sheen and harmonics, and when you distort it, it can give you a little bit of this audible stuff in the high frequencies. I could route it to the filter here like this. If you want to create a bit of filter movement, it's very easy to do. Maybe put the LFO1, route this to, or map it to the filter here. Let me just compare these guys soon. well, this is not what I want, so I put the LFO to envelope mode, so it means that it only plays it once, like this. So now it kind of closes. It's just like ow, or you could go ooh-ah if you wanted to. So this would be the ooh-ah, like if you want to do, or you could just do this. I will start with this. You can set the amount of, or the intensity of, or the how much the LFO, how much control it has over the filter here. As you can hear, I will tweak this a little bit. So now, because I'm closing the filter now, the LFO only opens up the filter a little bit, but if I give it more intensity here, it opens it up more. We can tweak these later on. One thing that you will need for an angry bass every single time is distortion. And this basic filter, see, I haven't touched this. This is the default filter. So this drive here is a big factor in these bass sounds. Obviously it gets louder, so I'll turn it down a little bit. Let me compare. Okay, close, not close, kind of far, but let's go further towards my goal. I'll go to effects, and here I will, let me just see what I did earlier. I'm going to use another distortion. You see, actually, when you, let's flick this guy on and off. It's kind of getting a little closer, maybe. So I won't get super meticulous with this. I'll just I'll keep this here. And often, even if I work with an analog desk, I always run the bass really loud into an analog desk. But obviously there's always an EQ, and it's very nice to play with the EQ and see how it affects the sound when you EQ the signal before distortion. So here you have this EQ and you have these two EQ nodes. So what would be probably kind of useful for me is to set it to this bell shape. So you can see this when you push the gain up a little bit. Dude, I'm starting to like it. Getting excited. Let me play it lower. Oh, this is already pretty nice. So do experiment with this. Like I'm not saying that you have to fully copy what I'm doing, but it's good for you to understand what is doing what. So I'm distorting the sound, but before distortion, I'm pushing some EQ here. So let me just tweak the gain a little bit and listen to how the sound changes. It's very good to flick things on and off. See, distortion is a big part here. And EQ. If you wanted to, you could use two EQs. Maybe. I'm not trying to go like super meticulous or anything. Compare. Okay, so one big thing here is a chorus, and this works really well in Serum. And listen to this guy. So it creates a bit of width, and it becomes kind of classy, you know. In a way, it feels like there's more voices. And just for the sake of space, we could put a little bit of reverb here. I don't usually like very big reverbs on bass lines, but this bass definitely has this nice sheen, these frequencies in the higher frequencies, so it's nice to give those a little bit of reverberation. You can do this, set this to taste. This is very nice. You can hear it in the stereo field. So let me compare. I'm probably still kind of far. The frequency, obviously, of the filter has a big impact on how the sound ends up sounding. Because here it gets brighter. One thing I want to do, let me move these guys a little bit so I can load up. So one thing I will use, and I'm sure other DAWs have similar tools, but one thing I really like in Ableton Live is erosion. So let me put this on the track. I want to move these so I can activate the tracks. Select. So this is my first bass. There is some more processing here. I'll probably talk about it a little bit. But let me crank this guy up. Let me make it wider too. Compare. Let's hear what this does. So it adds this very wide noise, well, no, like white noise type sound. Let's quickly compare these settings. The sine wave isn't good for this because it creates this very resonant, annoying undertone. But this is well nice. Let me compare. Oh, dude. So, experiment with this erosion, because it creates so much of this high energy. It really excites the bass. This is actually really kind of dull if you think about it now. I could put more energy into it with just by opening the filter. But you see what this can do. Then what else? Let me actually take a look at the sub frequencies of my first bass, which I started. Let me compare to the bass that I'm working on right now. Let me play it lower. It's not too bad, but you could do a little bit of EQ boosting. So pretty much any EQ will do. I could go for Pro Q3. Very useful. So boost the subs a little bit. Compare. My initial bass has more mids, so you could just boost the mids if you wanted to. I'm getting fairly close, so probably not worth comparing too much. I'm not trying to fully replicate, duplicate. So the factors that affect the sound here very much it's the distortion, types of distortion, the EQ before and also after distortion. So I'm not fully trying to fully trying to match it. I could, but it would take some time. But it comes down to EQ tweaks and distortion. So that you know now. So let me listen to the bass here, the original bass. Let me copy the notes. But the one thing here that I've done is pitch bend, because it can add some interesting vibe to the sound. So let me solo this and Serum pitch bend. And I'm playing some high notes. Let's listen to this. The pitch bend probably doesn't work yet. Okay, one thing here, yeah, I don't like how the filter, because here it's the filter kind of slowed down the attack of the sound. Okay, this will do. So I'll just tweak how the LFO affects filter, because it sounded like it fades in kind of too slow in a way. But let's talk about pitch bend a little bit. So what I've done here is I'm using the pitch bend of Serum, because I could do it in a clip here, but let's talk about Ableton pitch bend, which I'm not the biggest fan of. If I go to MIDI control and take a look at pitch bend, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm playing the right track. So yes, I am. So I could draw pitch bend here. But one thing I'm not a big fan of is how pitch bend values look in Ableton Live. See here, max value is this, 8191. What is that? I literally do not know. So I'm sure you have, when you work with sounds and frequencies and notes, you think about notes in terms of semitones, cents, octave. So this isn't really helping, seeing this value. So I wouldn't use this for pitch bend. I would use Serum's own pitch bend. And Ableton, it would be great if you just gave us actually helpful values. I love you, Ableton, but there's some things that should be fixed. So pitch bend values here, also I could probably make it mono. So pitch bend values are here. This is actually the pitch bend wheel. So pitch bend wheel is like, I'm sure you've seen a pitch bend wheel on a keyboard or something. So this is what you can do, but these determine the values, like how high it'll be pitched and how low. So the way it works is you play a note and you just turn the pitch bend. So it's useful here because now you can, well, at least it's somehow useful. I mean, because if you want to pitch it up an octave, I'm now seeing the pitch bend automation line here, because one thing I like about Ableton Live is you touch on an automation and that's what you see here. So now if I draw this automation, whoops, if I draw, so let me draw this automation. So when it's fully up, it pitches it up by an octave. You see the mod wheel, or the pitch bend wheel move here. And let's do this. Let's do a bend down, because this can sound kind of interesting. Or go even lower here. So one pro tip, I usually do a node here, automation node here. It'll return to the value this, and here I would do like a new node, and this would now pitch it down by only 2 semitones, because that's where I've set it to go. If I went for like -7, so this is all up to you how you want to do it, but this is the way that I would do it. So I would use the automation for Serum pitch bend wheel in not Ableton Live pitch bend because it's kind of annoying. And you could go crazy and pitch it down like this, and this, how you do it, that's up to you. I don't know how that's gonna sound, but well, that works. It definitely does work. And here I'm playing, actually, one thing I like to do with bass sounds is I play higher notes, like this scream comes from the bass. So it's just a higher note. Here, see? I really like doing that with bass. How I often do my tracks is like, if I think about like even how this song builds, it's like the bass starts kind of, there's not that much note variation, but when I get further, I want to introduce all or some variation. I know I'm kind of sidetracking here, but I also do, as part of my job, I do song critique for producers. So they send me their song and I do a song critique. And especially with less experienced producers, what they do is sometimes they play all their cards at once. So it means when the song drops, there, like, everything is there, and even the bass variation and stuff is there. So I always say, like, save some of that for later, because you want to have ingredients for later on. So I often start doing these higher notes with the bass later on in the song, and I think it works. So this song isn't even finished, so it's not even out yet, but I'm starting to do these higher notes with this bass, and with this like kind of angry bass, it really starts to scream and it sounds nice. So, tip. My bass still sounds different, but like I said, it comes down to distortion, EQ, more EQ, more distortion. So if I wanted to brighten up the bass a little bit, if I wanted to copy the automation or kind of just make it similar to how it was in my first bass, it's like ooey ooey. So now it's doing it. But if I wanted to make it brighter, oh my god, dude, you get so much of that harmonic content. It's really malleable. You could push the low mids if you want like a thicker sound. There's so much material in terms of frequencies to work with. One last thing, if you wanted to do that, is you could, if you want to get even crazier, let me just loop this part. So one thing you could do here, if you want to introduce even some more craziness into the sound, is go for the oscillator effects. I didn't do any of this in my initial bass. But it easily gets, especially when you're doing like a really dirty bass like this, make sure not to go too soggy, because some of these effects, it'll make it kind of, it doesn't necessarily help the sound. I'm quickly trying to find something remotely useful. Probably failing at that. Let me try it for this one. That's in a way really interesting, but not my thing. Okay, but you get my point. Screamo. it becomes different. But you know, just to give you a tip, do play with the oscillator effects. As you can see, it really mangles the oscillator, and there's a whole lot of different tones that you can find just by experimenting. I'm not the best teacher in terms of, yo, do this and it'll sound like that. It often takes a lot of experimentation, but I'm just saying, do experiment with these. Create a bass that's a good starting point. Then play with the distortion. Pay attention to how the tone changes when you mess with the filter, and also mess with the drive. Also, this distortion here, there's also different modes. These I didn't even touch. These have a massive effect on the sound. And I'm pretty far from where I started, honestly. This is... But play around with these, and also the amount of EQ and where you boost it. These are your tools when you want to create a dirty bass like this. I hope it helps. Till the next time.